The planet Proxima B hung like a blue-green jewel against the blackness of space. From the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, Captain Samantha Reynolds watched as they approached the newly discovered world. Her mission was simple on paper but complex in reality: establish the first human research outpost on this distant planet. "Preparing for atmospheric entry, Captain," said Jack Nguyen, the ship's pilot. His fingers moved quickly across the control panel as the ship began to descend. Samantha nodded. "All crew to landing stations." 5 years had passed since humans joined the Galactic Council. Among the hundreds of spacefaring races, humans were still seen as strange newcomers. The other races called them Deathworlders, a term for species that evolved on harsh, dangerous planets filled with predators and natural disasters. Most alien species came from gentle worlds with stable climates and few threats. They still don't understand us, Dr. Alan Garcia had said during their mission briefing. As the Horizon's chief scientist, he was eager to study Proxima B's life forms. To them, we're basically Space Orcs who somehow built spaceships. The ship landed in a clearing surrounded by tall, purple-tinged vegetation. The air was breathable but had a higher oxygen content than Earth, making the crew feel energetic but also causing them to tire more quickly. "Establish the base perimeter," Samantha ordered as the crew exited the ship. "No one goes beyond the markers without a partner and a tracker." The first days on Proxima B were busy with setting up equipment, building shelters, and beginning to catalog the local plants and animals. Dr. Garcia was especially excited by the variety of life forms they discovered. "It's remarkable," he told Samantha as they examined his findings on the 7th day. "This planet has numerous predatory species similar to Earth's. The convergent evolution is fascinating." On screens around his lab, images of the local wildlife flashed by: six-legged creatures resembling wolves, flying reptiles with feathered wings, massive bear-like animals with armored skin. "Are they dangerous to us?" Samantha asked. Alan shrugged. "All predators are potentially dangerous, but they seem to be avoiding us so far. They're smart enough to be cautious around unknown beings." Peter Wilson, the communications officer, was part of the team setting up sensor arrays around the base. His job was to ensure the colony could stay in contact with Earth and the Galactic Council. Tall and lean, with dark curly hair, Peter had always been good with machines, but not always good with people. On the 15th day, Peter's team was working on a hill about 2 miles from the main base when the sky darkened suddenly. "That doesn't look good," said Beth, one of the engineers. Pointing at approaching storm clouds, lightning flashed. But instead of the familiar white-blue of Earth lightning, it was green and seemed to move in strange patterns. The team quickly packed up their equipment. "Head back to base," Peter said into his communicator. "I'll finish securing this array and follow in 5 minutes." The storm hit faster than expected. Green lightning struck nearby, and the resulting electromagnetic pulse damaged Peter's tracker and communicator. By the time he finished his work, the rain was falling in sheets, and visibility was nearly zero. Peter started walking in what he thought was the direction of the base, but after 30 minutes, he realized he was lost. The dense purple forest all looked the same, and without his tracker, he had no way to navigate. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped. Peter found shelter beneath a large rock formation and pulled emergency supplies from his pack. He had food and water for 3 days, a small heater, and a light. The colony would search for him once they realized he was missing, but in this terrain, it might take time. "Just stay calm," he told himself. "Follow your training." Peter set up his small camp and ate a protein bar. The night sounds of Proxima filled the air, whistling calls, rustling vegetation, and occasional howls from distant creatures. He tried not to think about all the predators Dr. Garcia had documented. Sleep came in short bursts. Each time he woke, Peter checked his surroundings and listened. During one such check, around what might have been midnight, he heard a new sound: soft footsteps approaching his shelter. Peter turned his light toward the sound and found himself staring at a large, Wolf-like creature. It had 6 legs, a long, snout, and eyes that glowed yellow in the darkness. Its fur was deep blue with silver streaks. The creature stood about 4 feet tall at the shoulder, muscular and clearly powerful. His first instinct was to grab the knife from his belt, but Peter stopped himself. On Earth, showing fear or aggression often triggered predator attacks. Instead, he remembered his xenobiology training. "Easy there," he said softly, keeping his voice calm. He slowly lowered himself to appear less threatening. The creature tilted, its head studying him. It made a low rumbling sound but didn't advance. Peter's mind raced. This was clearly a top predator, similar to wolves back on Earth. On his home planet, humans had once shared the landscape with wolves, eventually forming bonds that led to domesticated dogs. Those ancient humans hadn't conquered wolves through force but through gradual trust building and mutual benefit, moving very slowly. Peter reached into his pack and pulled out another protein bar. He unwrapped it, broke off a piece, and placed it on the ground between them. "Just a little offering," he said quietly. "No threat here." The creature sniffed the air, clearly detecting the food. It watched Peter for several long minutes, then took a few cautious steps forward. With a quick motion, it snatched the food and retreated several feet to eat it. Peter smiled. "Good, huh? Not the best flavor, but it's high in calories." When the creature finished, it looked at Peter expectantly. He broke off another piece and placed it slightly closer to himself. This time, the creature approached with less hesitation. They continued this exchange several times. With each offering, the animal came closer and stayed longer. By the 4th piece, it was eating just a few feet from Peter. "I think I'll call you Scout," Peter said, "since you're scouting me out." Scouts. Ears perked up at the sound of the name. The creature made a chirping noise that didn't sound threatening at all. As the night wore on, Scout settled down about 10 feet from Peter's position. Neither slept much, but a strange comfort developed in their shared vigilance. When other sounds approached in the darkness, Scout would rise slightly and growl, and whatever was coming would retreat. By morning, Peter realized something remarkable had happened. He had made first contact not just with an alien species, but with an alien predator, and somehow they had reached an understanding. When the search team found him the next day, they stopped in shock at the sight of Peter walking calmly toward the base with a 6-legged Volf creature trotting beside him. "Peter, get away from that thing," shouted Lisa Martinez, the security chief, raising her stun rifle. "Don't shoot!" Peter called back. "This is Scout. He's with me." The search team watched in disbelief as Scout stayed loyally by Peter's side, occasionally looking up at him as if for reassurance. "How did you do that?" Lisa asked when they reached the base. A crowd had gathered to stare at the strange pair. Peter shrugged. "I shared my food." He kept the other predators away. "We helped each other." Dr. Garcia pushed through the crowd, his eyes wide with excitement. "Do you realize what you've done? You formed a bond with an apex predator in less than 24 hours. As Scout sniffed curiously at the base's perimeter, Samantha approached Peter. "This could change everything we know about interspecies relationships," she said quietly. "You may have just made the most important discovery on this mission." Peter looked at Scout, who was now accepting cautious pats from Dr. Garcia. "I don't think I discovered anything new, Captain. I think I just remembered something very old. Something humans have always known how to do." News of Peter's bond with Scout spread quickly through the research outpost. Dr. Alan Garcia set up a special area where he could observe their interactions safely. Scout was free to come and go as he pleased, but he spent most of his time near Peter. "This changes everything we thought we knew about first contact with alien species," Alan said as he watched Peter and Scout playing a simple game of fetch. Scout had quickly learned to retrieve objects and bring them back. "I don't think it's that complicated," Peter replied. "Humans have been making friends with predators for thousands of years. Dogs were wolves once." Over the next few days, Scout began to bring others of his kind to the edge of the camp. 3 more Volf-like creatures, slightly smaller than Scout, watched from the tree line with curious yellow eyes. "I think those are his packmates," Alan said. "He's introducing them to us slowly." Peter nodded. They're careful, smart. They want to see if we can be trusted. Captain Samantha Reynolds was initially worried about safety, but soon saw the potential benefits. If we can establish peaceful relations with the dominant predators, it might make our research work much easier, she told her senior staff. The relationship between humans and Proxima B's predators took an unexpected turn 3 weeks after Peter's night in the forest. Lisa Martinez, the security chief, was patrolling the outer perimeter when she heard distressed sounds coming from a marshy area. Lisa followed the noise and found a massive bear-like creature trapped in a pit of quicksand-like mud. The animal had 6 legs and armored plates on its back. Despite its fierce appearance, its eyes showed intelligence and fear. "You're stuck pretty bad, aren't you?" Lisa said, assessing the situation. The creature growled but seemed too exhausted to be truly threatening. Lisa radioed back to base. "I need rope and help at the north perimeter. Got a big animal stuck in the mud." Using equipment from the base and branches from nearby trees, Lisa created a makeshift platform that she pushed toward the creature. The animal seemed to understand her intention and grabbed onto the branches with powerful claws. After an hour of careful work, Lisa and 2 other crew members managed to pull the massive creature free. Once on solid ground, the animal shook mud from its fur and turned to face Lisa. She stood perfectly still as it approached and sniffed her. Then, to everyone's surprise, it made a rumbling sound and gently bumped its head against her leg before lumbering off into the forest. "I think you just made a friend," one of the crew members said. The next morning, the bear-like creature returned to the edge of the camp. It carried a large, deer-like animal in its jaws, which it dropped at the perimeter before sitting down and watching the humans. "I think it brought you a gift," Peter told Lisa. "A thank you for saving its life." Lisa approached the creature carefully. "I think I'll call you Bruiser," she said. The animal made the same rumbling sound as before, which they now realized was a sign of contentment. Similar encounters happened throughout the following weeks. Jack Nguyen, the pilot, discovered a nest of small, raptor-like creatures with feathers and sharp teeth. When a storm threatened to flood their nest, Jack moved them to higher ground. The next day, 5 of the raptors followed him around the base, chirping and hopping excitedly. "They think you're their parent now," Alan told him with a laugh. Jack shrugged. "They're actually pretty helpful. They catch all the pest creatures that have been getting into our food storage." 2 months after landing on Proxima B, the research outpost had transformed. Humans worked and lived alongside various predatory species from the planet. Scout and his pack helped track movement in the forest and provided early warning of approaching storms. Bruiser and 2 others of his kind helped move heavy equipment. Jack's raptors, which he called the crew, hunted pests and found edible fruits. "We've created something unique here," Samantha told her team during a meeting. "A true interspecies community." Their success caught the attention of the Galactic Council. 6 months after the Horizon landed, a delegation arrived to inspect the human outpost's progress. The delegation consisted of 3 alien species: a tall, thinitarian named Ambassador Krillvex, a squat, amphibious Marat, and a floating, gas-filled Helion. They were accompanied by their own security teams. "We received your reports," Ambassador Krillvex said after formal greetings were exchanged. "But we found them difficult to believe. You claim to be cohabiting with predatory species?" "We are," Samantha confirmed. "Would you like to see?" The delegation toured the outpost, watching with a mixture of shock and horror as humans interacted freely with the various Proximan creatures. When Peter demonstrated how Scout's pack now helped patrol the perimeter, the Atarian ambassador stepped back in alarm. "You allow these beasts free movement in your living areas?" Krillvex asked, his thin face showing disgust. "They're not beasts," Peter corrected. "They're intelligent creatures who've chosen to work with us." The tour ended at Dr. Garcia's lab, where he showed the delegation his research on the rapidly evolving relationships between humans and Proximan species. "In just 6 months, we've seen remarkable cognitive development in the species that interact regularly with humans," Alan explained. "They're learning from us, and we're learning from them." Ambassador Krovak shook his head. This is not how colonization is done, he said firmly. On every world the Council has helped settle, predatory species are controlled or eliminated. They pose too great a risk. Eliminated? Samantha asked, her voice sharp. You mean killed off? Of course. The ambassador replied, It is standard procedure. Dangerous predators must be removed to create safe environments. We assumed humans would follow this protocol, especially given your classification as Deathworlders. You should understand the threat better than most. The room fell silent. The humans exchanged troubled glances. That's not how we do things, Samantha said finally. On Earth, predators are essential parts of healthy ecosystems. Without them, everything falls out of balance. Krovak's expression hardened. The Council has protocols for a reason, Captain Reynolds. These creatures cannot be trusted. They are governed by instinct, not reason. As if understanding the conversation, Scout moved to Peter's side and looked up at the ambassador. The Volf-like creature's intelligent eyes seemed to challenge the alien's assumptions. With all due respect, Ambassador, Peter said, placing his hand on Scout's head, you're wrong. These animals have shown remarkable ability to reason, communicate, and form bonds. They've chosen to work with us because the relationship benefits both sides. This is unprecedented, the Morat delegate gurgled through its translator, and potentially dangerous. I must inform the Council of this situation, Ambassador Krovak said. You may have created a serious diplomatic incident, Captain. The Council has strict rules about introducing predatory species into the galactic community. Samantha stood tall, her crew gathering behind her. We aren't introducing them to the galaxy, Ambassador. We're simply respecting the natural order of this world. And as Earth's representatives, we cannot and will not participate in the extinction of these species. As the delegation returned to their ship, the humans watched with concern. Scout and his pack sensed the tension and formed a protective line behind the humans. What do you think will happen? Peter asked quietly. Samantha watched the alien ship rise into the sky. I don't know. But we just took a stand for something important. Not just for Proxima B's creatures, but for what humanity believes in. Alan nodded. They're afraid because they don't understand. They've never lived with predators like we have. They never learned what we've known since our earliest days on Earth. And what's that? Lisa asked, with Bruiser standing protectively at her side. That sometimes, Alan said, your greatest allies are the ones everyone else fears. 6 months after the tense meeting with the Galactic Council delegation, the human outpost on Proxima B had grown into a thriving colony. New buildings spread across the clearing, and gardens with earth plants grew alongside native vegetation. The relationship between humans and Proximan predators had deepened in ways no one had expected. Greg Powell, the colony's chief engineer, worked on a solar panel array on the outskirts of the settlement. Beside him, a massive serpentine creature, with iridescent scales stretched 20 feet from head to tail. The creature, which Greg had named Noodle, despite its intimidating appearance, helped by holding tools in its flexible coils. Pass me the wrench, Noodle, Greg said. Pointing to the toolbox, Noodle's forked tongue flicked out as it carefully selected the correct tool and handed it to Greg. The engineer smiled and patted the creature's smooth head. You're getting better. At this every day, he told Noodle. Pretty soon you'll be building these panels without me. Back at the main compound, Dr. Alan Garcia continued his research. His lab was filled with charts showing the rapid cognitive development of the Proximan, species that interacted regularly with humans. It's remarkable, he told Captain Samantha Reynolds during her weekly inspection. Their brain activity has changed. The predators that work with us show increased problem-solving abilities and communication skills. Any idea why? Samantha asked, watching through the window as Peter played with Scout and his pack. Alan adjusted his glasses. I have a theory. Humans evolved alongside predators on Earth. We competed with them, feared them, and eventually formed partnerships with some of them. We understand predator psychology in ways other galactic species don't. So we're good with them because we used to be them? Samantha asked. In a way, yes. Humans were both predator and prey throughout our evolution. We know what it's like to be both hunter and hunted. It gives us a unique perspective. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Lisa Martinez's voice came over the communication system. Unknown ship approaching. All personnel to emergency positions. Samantha rushed to the command center. On the main screen, a large vessel with sharp, angular lines descended through Proxima B's atmosphere. It wasn't a Galactic Council design. Any response to our hails? Samantha asked. None, Lisa replied from her security station. But I'm detecting weapon systems powering up. Before Samantha could issue orders, a series of explosions rocked the colony. Smoke filled the air as buildings at the perimeter burst into flames. We're under attack. Someone shouted. The unknown ship landed half a mile from the colony. Armored figures emerged, firing weapons that release nets and paralyzing energy fields rather than lethal blasts. They're not trying to kill us, Lisa realized. They're trying to capture. The attackers moved with military precision. They focused on areas where humans worked alongside Proximan predators, capturing both whenever possible. Greg Powell was working alone with Noodle when 3 attackers surrounded them. They fired an energy net that entangled both the engineer and the serpentine creature. Despite Noodle's strength and Greg's struggles, they couldn't break free. Stop fighting or we'll sedate you, one attacker said in heavily accented Standard Galactic. The Vexter Collective requires specimens. Greg had heard of the Vexter. They were notorious throughout the galaxy for exploiting resources and destroying ecosystems. Unlike the Galactic Council, which at least claimed to have ethical standards, the Vexter were interested only in profit. The attackers dragged Greg and Noodle to their ship. Inside, they saw other humans and Proximan creatures in separate holding cells. Jack Millian was there, separated from 3 of his raptor companions. 2 of Scout's pack had been captured, though Scout himself was nowhere to be seen. A tall, gray-skinned alien with 4 arms approached Greg's cell. Fascinating, it said, studying Greg and Noodle. The reports were accurate. Humans have formed symbiotic relationships with predator species. We're not specimens, Greg said angrily. Release us immediately. The alien ignored him. I am Chief. Researcher Zach of the Vexter Collective. Your colony has created something valuable, human. Predator species that can be controlled are worth much in certain markets. We don't control them, Greg insisted. We work with them, Zach made a dismissive gesture. Semantics. The result is the same. These creatures obey commands and perform complex tasks. The collective will learn your methods and improve upon them. In another part of the ship, Vexter scientists were already experimenting. Greg watched in horror through his cell window as they placed neural implants on one of Jack's raptors. The small creature screeched in pain as the scientists tried to force it to perform tasks using punishment devices. Stop it, Greg shouted. You're hurting them. Zach studied Greg's reaction with interest. Your emotional attachment to these animals is unexpected. Perhaps that is part of your control method. They're not just animals, Greg said. They're intelligent beings with their own thoughts and feelings. Then they will make even better weapons, Zach replied coldly. For 3 days, Greg and the other captured humans were forced to watch as the Vexter experimented on their Proximan companions. The predators resisted the cruel conditioning, often refusing to cooperate despite painful punishments. In his cell, Greg noticed something remarkable. Noodle, despite being separated from him by a force field, watched his movements carefully. When Greg made certain hand signals they had developed during their work together, Noodle responded with subtle movements of its head. They haven't broken our connection, Greg realized. He began to communicate with Noodle using their simple sign language. The serpent understood, responding with signals of its own. Greg realized that the Vexter, for all their technology, had underestimated both the predators and the bond they shared with humans. At night, when the ship was quieter, Greg whispered to the other captured humans. The predators are still with us. They haven't given up. Jack nodded from his cell. My crew still responds to my calls, even with those horrible implants attached to them. The Vexter don't understand what they're dealing with, Greg said. They think this is about control, but it's about trust. On the fourth day, Greg noticed Noodle testing the force field of its enclosure. The Serpent had discovered that the field weakened slightly whenever the ship's main engines powered up for system checks. During one such check, Noodle managed to push part of its flexible body through the weakened field. Instead of trying to escape, the Serpent stretched toward the control panel near Greg's cell. "That's it, Noodle," Greg whispered encouragingly. "You can reach it." With incredible precision, Noodle pressed the exact sequence of buttons Greg had shown it using hand signals. The force field around Greg's cell flickered and died. Greg quickly moved to free Noodle completely, then worked to release the other captured humans and predators. As the alarms began to sound, Greg faced a moment of truth. The human prisoners could try to escape on their own, or they could risk everything to free all their Proximan companions. "We stick together," Greg decided, and the others agreed without hesitation. As Vexter security forces rushed toward the holding area, the freed predators didn't flee or attack randomly as the aliens might have expected. Instead, they worked in coordinated patterns with the humans, using strategies developed during months of cooperation at the colony. The Vexter had made a critical mistake. They had assumed they were dealing with animals that humans had somehow tamed. What they faced instead was something unprecedented in their experience: predator species that had chosen to form alliances with humans, creating partnerships that benefited both sides. And somewhere beyond the Vexter ship, the rest of the colony was preparing a rescue mission. Greg knew his fellow humans wouldn't abandon them, and neither would the predators who had become their most unexpected allies. Back at the human colony, Captain Samantha Reynolds stood in the command center surrounded by her remaining team. The Vexter attack had been swift and targeted, leaving several buildings damaged and 12 humans missing, along with many of their Proximan companions. "Status report," Samantha demanded, her voice tight with controlled anger. "The Vexter ship is still in orbit," Lisa Martinez replied. She had escaped capture during the attack and now led the colony's defense. "They've made no further moves against us, but our missing people are likely aboard." Peter Wilson stood near the door with Scout pressed against his leg. The Volf-like creature had been hunting in the forest during the attack, returning to find 2 members of his pack missing. Scout's yellow eyes were alert, his ears forward with attention. "We need to rescue them," Peter said. "But the Horizon wasn't built for combat. We can't attack a Vexter warship directly." Dr. Alan Garcia entered the room, followed by a small, blue-skinned alien. The newcomer had large, pupil-less eyes and moved with a fluid grace that suggested an aquatic origin. "Captain, this is Zorthel," Alan introduced. "He's been monitoring our colony for the Galactic Council Science Division. He has information about the Vexter." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "You've been spying on us?" Zorthel made a gesture that might have been an apology. "Observing," he corrected. "The Council was divided about your Predator integration program. Some wanted to shut it down immediately, but others, like myself, argued for continued study." "And now?" Samantha asked. "Now the Vexter have complicated matters," Zorthel said. "They are outside Council jurisdiction, but pose a greater threat than your experiment ever could. I can help you track their ship." Peter stepped forward. "Why would you help us?" Zorthel looked at Scout, who stared back with intelligent eyes. "Because what you've created here is remarkable. It deserves to be protected, not exploited. And because the Vexter cannot be allowed to weaponize these relationships." With Zorthel's help, they located the Vexter ship. It had moved to a space station hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of the star system. The station served as a research facility where the Vexter could conduct their experiments away from prying eyes. "We'll need a rescue team," Samantha decided. "Small enough to move quickly, large enough to handle resistance." "I'm going," Peter said immediately. "Me too," Lisa added. 8 humans volunteered for the mission. More surprisingly, many of the remaining Proximan predators gathered near the horizon, clearly indicating their desire to join. "They understand what's happening," Alan observed with amazement. "They know their companions are in danger." Samantha studied the assembled creatures. Scout and his remaining pack members paced with nervous energy. Several of Jack's small raptors chirped anxiously. 3 of the massive bear-like creatures Bruiser had introduced to the colony stood waiting patiently. "We'll take them," Samantha decided. "Their abilities might be our best advantage." Zorthel provided access codes that would allow the Horizon to approach the station without immediate detection. 20 hours later, the ship drifted silently toward the Vexter facility, its engines running at minimum power. "We'll dock at this maintenance port," Samantha told the rescue team, pointing to a schematic Zorthel had provided. "It's rarely monitored." Peter knelt beside Scout and the other predators. "We need to be quiet and careful," he said slowly. The creatures watched him intently, seeming to understand the seriousness of his tone if not his exact words. The Horizon docked successfully. Samantha led the first team into the station, with Lisa following with the second. The predators moved with surprising stealth, following human hand signals they had learned during months of working together. Inside the station, they encountered few Vexter at first. The facility was primarily automated, with minimal security. "In the outer sections, they're overconfident," Lisa whispered. "They don't expect anyone to find them here, let alone attack." As they moved deeper into the station, Scout suddenly froze, his nose lifting to scent the air. He made a low sound that Peter recognized. "He smells his pack members," Peter translated. "They're close." Scout led them through a series of corridors to a large laboratory. Through a window they could see Vexter scientists working with captured Proximan predators. The creatures wore neural implants and restraining devices that limited their movements. "There's Greg," Lisa said, pointing to a cell where their engineer was being held separately from Noodle. The serpentine creature was in a transparent container filled with restraining gel. Samantha assessed the situation quickly. "We need a distraction to draw some of them away from the lab." "I have an idea," Lisa said. She whispered instructions to Bruiser and the other bear-like creatures. The massive predators seemed to understand, moving with her toward a power distribution node. Minutes later, alarms blared as multiple systems failed throughout the station. Half the Vexter rushed from the lab to investigate the damage. "Now," Samantha ordered, the rescue team burst into the lab. The remaining Vexter were unprepared for the coordinated attack of humans and Proximan predators working together. Within moments, the scientists were subdued, and the team began freeing the prisoners. Greg's face lit up when he saw his fellow colonists. "I knew you'd come," he said as Peter unlocked his cell. "We had help," Peter replied, nodding toward Scout, who was already freeing his captured pack members. As they removed the neural implants from the captive predators, something unexpected happened. The freed creatures immediately began assisting with the rescue, helping to release others still trapped. "They're communicating with each other," Alan observed in wonder. "Species that would normally avoid or hunt each other are working together." Vexter security team arrived, weapons ready. They fired paralyzing beams that the humans and predators now knew to avoid. What happened next astonished even the humans who had worked with the Proximan creatures for months without any human direction. The predators formed attack patterns that complemented each other's strengths. The Volf-like creatures distracted and flanked the Vexter. The Raptors targeted control panels and weapon systems with precise strikes. The bear creatures provided powerful direct assaults that broke through defenses. "They're using hunting strategies," Greg realized as he worked to free Noodle from its container. "But they've adapted them to work together." Once freed, Noodle immediately joined the resistance, using its flexible body to disarm Vexter, guards, and disable security systems. The combined force of humans and predators moved efficiently through the station, freeing more captives and fighting their way toward the docking bay where the Horizon waited. The Vexter, despite their advanced technology, were overwhelmed by the unexpected cooperation between species that their research had classified as impossible to integrate. Chief Researcher Zach confronted them at the final security checkpoint. "This is unprecedented," he said, his forearms holding various weapons. "You've weaponized these creatures more effectively than we could have imagined." "That's where you're wrong," Samantha replied. We haven't weaponized anything. We've formed partnerships. They fight with us because they choose to, not because we control them. As if to prove her point, Scout stepped forward without command, positioning himself protectively in front of the humans. Other predators followed his lead. Forming a living barrier between the colonists and the Vexter, Zack hesitated, seeing something in the creature's coordinated behavior that challenged everything the Vexter had assumed about predator psychology. Your mistake was thinking this was about dominance, Greg said, with Noodle coiled beside him. It was never about that. It's about mutual respect and cooperation. The standoff ended when Lisa and Bruiser arrived with the rest of the rescue team, surrounding the remaining Vexter forces. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Zack surrendered Dot as they returned to the horizon with all their people and predator companions. Alan studied the interactions between the different Proximan species. Something remarkable has happened, he told Samantha. These predators from completely different evolutionary lines are now communicating with each other. They formed a network, using humans as a bridge between species. Samantha watched as a raptor rode comfortably on Bruiser's back, while Noodle and Scout's pack coordinated to guard the ship's airlock. We didn't just rescue our friends today, she said quietly. We witnessed the birth of something entirely new. News of the incident with the Vexter spread quickly through the galaxy. The Galactic Council, alarmed by reports of humans fighting alongside predator species, called an emergency session. The council chamber on the neutral space station Harmony was filled with representatives from dozens of spacefaring civilizations, all eager to discuss what many were calling the human predator problem. Captain Samantha Reynolds stood before them, along with Dr. Alan Garcia, Peter Wilson, Greg Powell, and Lisa Martinez. Behind them, carefully contained in a special observation area, were Scout, Noodle, Bruiser, and several of Jack's raptors. The Proximan creatures were calm despite the strange environment, watching the proceedings with obvious intelligence. This session will address the unprecedented situation on Proxima B, announced the council president, a tall, crystalline being, whose voice resonated through the chamber. Captain Reynolds, you stand accused of violating council protocols regarding predator species management. How do you respond? Samantha stepped forward. With respect, we reject the premise of the accusation. The protocols you refer to are based on fear and misunderstanding, not science. Ambassador Krilvex rose from his seat, his thin face tight with anger. The humans have created an army of controlled beasts. They use these creatures to attack a Vexter research vessel. Research vessel? Greg interrupted, unable to contain himself. They attacked our colony and kidnapped our people. The chamber erupted in shouts and arguments. Many council members clearly feared what the humans had done, while others seemed more curious than concerned. When order was restored, Dr. Garcia approached the central podium with data tablets. Honorable representatives, I've prepared research showing exactly what's happening on Proxima B. We haven't tamed these creatures through force or dominance as many of you assume. Alan displayed images and brain scans of the Proximan predators, showing their neural activity before and after working with humans. These species chose to form relationships with us, Alan explained. Their cognitive abilities have expanded through these interactions. We've created mutual partnerships based on respect and cooperation. Impossible, huffed a reptilian delegate. Predators cannot be reasoned with. They are governed by instinct alone. Peter stepped forward, nodding toward Scout. May I demonstrate? After nervous murmurs and a reluctant approval, Peter entered the observation area. Scout approached him, immediately touching his nose to Peter's hand in greeting. Peter performed a series of hand signals and Scout responded with precise movements, communicating through their developed sign language. More surprisingly, Scout then turned to Noodle and made similar gestures. The serpentine creature responded, and together they performed a complex series of actions that demonstrated problem-solving and cooperation between different species. The council chamber fell silent. What you're seeing isn't training or control, Peter explained. Scout is communicating with Noodle. They've developed their own methods of interaction, using what they've learned from us as a starting point. Alan nodded. Humans have a unique perspective on predator psychology because we evolved alongside predators on Earth. We competed with them, feared them, and eventually formed partnerships with some of them. Explain, demanded the council president. Samantha took over. Earth's history is filled with examples of predator species that became partners with humans. Wolves became dogs. Wild cats became companions. Even horses, once prey animals, became willing partners in work and travel. This is your natural ability? Asked Zorthel, who had joined them as a witness. Yes, Samantha confirmed. We don't have predators on Earth because we killed them all. We don't have predators because we adopted them. This isn't a new human trait, it's the oldest one we have. Greg added, the Vexter tried to replicate our success through force and control. They failed because they didn't understand the fundamental principle, mutual respect. Lisa stepped forward with Bruiser by her side. The massive creature stood calmly, its intelligent eyes surveying the chamber. What the council needs to understand, Lisa said, is that these relationships benefit both sides. Bruiser's species gains protection from certain environmental threats and access to medical care. In return, they help us with tasks requiring strength. It's a partnership, not exploitation, the council debated for hours. Some members remained firmly opposed to the human approach, while others saw potential benefits. The discussion grew heated. At times, with several delegates demanding that all predator species on Proxima be contained or removed. Finally, a compromise was proposed. The humans would be allowed to continue their experiment under supervision, but no predator species would be permitted to leave Proxima B without special authorization. This isn't ideal, Samantha told her crew privately, but it's a starting point. 3 months later, a new batch of colonists arrived on Proxima B. The colony had expanded, with new buildings and facilities designed to accommodate both humans and their Proximan companions. The Galactic Council had officially classified humans as symbiotic facilitators, a new category that acknowledged their unique ability to form partnerships across species boundaries. As the new arrivals disembarked from their ship, they were greeted by the sight of humans working alongside various Proximan creatures. In the 6 months since the confrontation with the Vexter, the relationships had deepened even further. Scouts Pack now included several new members, and puppies born in the colony showed even greater cognitive abilities than their parents. Among the newcomers was a family with a young boy named Ben. He watched with wide eyes as Peter approached with Scout and 2 puppies. Would you like to meet them? Peter asked. Ben nodded nervously. Just move slowly and let them come to you, Peter advised. They're curious about new people. The boy knelt and extended his hand carefully. The mother predator watched calmly as one of her puppies approached, sniffed the child's fingers, and then gently licked them. Ben's face lit up with wonder. He likes me, Peter corrected with a smile. And yes, she does. Nearby, Dr. Garcia watched the interaction with satisfaction. It's happening again, he said to Captain Reynolds. The same pattern that played out thousands of years ago on Earth, now repeating on a distant world. Samantha nodded. And each generation will form stronger bonds than the last. Across the colony, similar scenes played out. Greg and Noodle worked on new buildings, communicating through their developed sign language. Lisa and Bruiser patrolled the perimeter with other security teams. Jack's raptors, now nearly 30 in number, helped tend gardens and hunt pests. The news of their success had spread throughout the galaxy, causing many species to reconsider their approach to predators on their own worlds. Some remained skeptical, but others sent observers to learn from the human example. The Council is still nervous about what we've created here, Samantha told her senior staff during a meeting. They're afraid these relationships might someday threaten the established order. They're right to be a little nervous, Alan replied. Not because we would ever use these bonds for conquest, but because what we've done here challenges thousands of years of their assumptions. Peter looked out the window where Scout was teaching younger predators how to patrol effectively. We've shown them a different way to see the universe. Not as something to control, but as something to connect with. In the evening as the duel Sons of Proxima Centauri set over the colony, humans and their various companions gathered in the central square. No one had planned this gathering, it had simply become a tradition, a time for the different species to mingle and interact. A visiting council delegate watched in amazement, as predators that would naturally compete or hunt each other instead played, communicated, and cooperated, using humans as bridges between their different worlds. "I still don't understand how you did this," the delegate said to Samantha. She smiled, watching as Ben giggled while Scout's puppies tumbled around him. "We didn't do anything special. We just remembered what humanity has always known. The most dangerous thing in any environment isn't a predator you can see and understand, it's fear of the unknown." The delegate considered this. "And the predators? What do they gain from these relationships?" "Family," Samantha said simply. "Something every living being seeks, connection, purpose, the same things we all want." As night fell on Proxima b, the colony lights illuminated humans and predators resting together under alien stars. A living example of why Deathworlders like. Humans had no natural predators in the galaxy, they didn't conquer them. They welcomed them home.